first a little bit about me. My name is Kasper. You can find me on Twitter as 0xKasper. I am the lead smart contract auditor at Hexens. We are a cybersecurity firm, and we do smart contract audits. And we also do cryptography audits for example, zero-knowledge applications like the Polygon ZK EVM. Yeah, so I'm a white hat hacker. I can never get enough. So in my own time, I also do bug bounty and like security research for my own knowledge. At the beginning, I used to play a lot of CTFs, and that's kind of what got me into Web 2 security. And then I went into bug bounty and eventually got into Web 3 as an auditor. So at Hexens, earlier this year, we did the audit for Lido. And this was the Lido v2 upgrade. And well, among some other features, it included support for withdrawals. So as you may have known, Ethereum recently enabled withdrawals for validators. And the Lido v2 upgrade also supports this for stakers to withdraw. So yeah, we can first briefly look at what is liquid staking. So you may have heard that recently we had the merge. This is where Ethereum went from proof of work to proof of stake. And instead of miners, now we have validators. And well, people can stake Ether to become a validator. And then these validators propose blocks and then vote on them. And for this, they will earn rewards. There was a downside, however. It's that there is a set amount of ETH required to become a validator. That is 32 ETH. And in the current market, that's like $60,000. And yeah, not everyone has that lying around, so not everyone can participate. Well, because of that, we have staking pools, and these pools are basically the liquid staking protocols. Here, anyone can stake any amount of ETH and then earn rewards proportionally. And also, the protocol will handle like node creation, so you don't need to do this yourself. Yeah, these protocols often have a liquid staking token. So like for Lido, that is stake ETH. And this represents the stake position of the user, and then they will earn rewards. The token accumulates rewards. And they can also be traded, which then enables composability, which is great in the space of DeFi, because other protocols will be able to build on top of those reward accumulating tokens. However, there is, of course, it gives rise to a security risk, because you're not staking ETH yourself, you're giving it to a protocol, and because of that, you get exposed to the risk that the protocol might bring, like vulnerabilities in the implementation of the protocol or potential malicious validators. Okay, yeah, I'll be giving some examples of decentralized liquid staking protocols. So we are interested in the decentralized ones that have the core part of their protocol on-chain. They might have some developer team or governance that controls the protocol and a set of public, maybe trusted validators. Yeah, you can see there are already a lot. There's still more coming. Liquid staking is definitely a hot topic, and especially since withdrawals are enabled. So yeah, at the top with the largest market share, there's Lido, also Frax Ether and Rocket Pool. And there's more. There's Stader, Eigenlayer, Stakewise, Trenches, and this is non-exhaustive. There's still more. But yeah, what we will be looking at is like what kind of risks do they have in common? Okay. Yeah, I'll be going over each one first briefly, and then we'll look into more detail. So in my experience, from what I've seen, like the biggest problem is basically data availability. Like how do you get data from the consensus layer to the execution layer in your smart contracts? There's currently no like programmatic way to read consensus layer data, like a validator balance, from a smart contract. Yeah, secondly, an obvious risk is what if one of the validators in the validator set turns malicious or might go offline for unintentionally, or their private keys get compromised. Yeah, a third risk is, of course, implementation bugs. That is everywhere, but we'll be looking at some more concrete examples that could occur in liquid staking protocols. Yeah, and this is taken from our Lido audit. Yeah, for me, MEV, so maximum extractable value, is also a security risk. And I'm not talking about like sandwiching a trade without slippage protection. I'm more talking about like, are there any strategies in the protocol that a user can exploit to manipulate the protocol and extract value at the cost of other users? Especially if such a strategy is quite profitable, and if it's repeatable, well, then we're more talking about an exploit or even a hack. And you can compare this to like self-liquidation in a lending protocol. If that is profitable, then that is also a hack. And finally, I want to highlight misunderstanding the specification of the consensus layer. So if there's like semantic differences in the specification and how this is implemented in the protocol, then this can also give rise to bugs. Right, so the first point is about the data, the problem of data availability. So how do we get data from the consensus layer to our smart contracts? And most protocols will implement a data oracle. So this is a smart contract where someone has to submit the data to the oracle. And this can be like the state root of the consensus layer, or it can be even already parsed validated data. There's more considerations to be made, because someone or some set of validators have to provide this data to the oracle, and it has no way to verify that this is correct. So if the protocol has one developer submitting state roots directly to the oracle, that's not very safe. If there's like a set of validators that have to reach consensus and then vote on this and submit that to the oracle, it might take a bit longer, but it's a lot safer. So in the former case, there's especially a greater risk of falsified data getting into the oracle. And this is very critical, because the oracle trusts this data, and in turn the protocol trusts the oracle for any data, like a validator balance. So if, for example, suddenly data comes in that there's no validator balance, or validator balance is an enormous amount, then this can change the share rate, and this can in turn lead to loss of user funds. Yeah, another point is, of course, delayed data. What if data comes in too late, and this can give rise to like MEV strategies. So Lido solves this with, like I said, a set of oracle nodes. So it is a trusted set of nodes that have to vote and reach consensus on oracle data. Lido also has parsed validated data, so they submit an oracle report. And because of this, they also have an on-chain oracle report sanity checker, which can check that the report has no anomalies that might occur in a malicious report. So for example, it is not possible to submit a report where the balance decreases more than X%. And this further limits the impact that a malicious report could have on the protocol. Yeah, I want to specifically look at malicious validators. So what if you have a set of validators on the consensus layer working for the protocol? What if one of them turns malicious or goes offline or has their keys compromised? How does the protocol handle this? Well, as you may know, like if a validator misbehaves on the consensus layer, they will get penalties, or they might even get slashed. And these are user funds. So yeah, this leads to the loss of user funds. So there needs to be a process in the protocol for deciding on an exit, like this validator is misbehaving, they should exit. However, currently there's no, again, there's no way from a smart contract to initialize such an exit. That is possibly in the future, but it's currently not possible. The only way to exit is if the validator initiates this exit with their private key. And so this gives a bit more risk for the loss of user funds, because if the validator goes rogue, he's not going to exit. And so, one way that protocols try to mitigate this risk is by dividing the penalties among all of the stakers, so the risk kind of gets spread out. And another way to kind of protect against is with the right withdrawal credentials. It's just something I want to mention. So the protocol has to ensure that the withdrawal credentials are set correctly, and this is an Ethereum address where any withdrawals would go to. And this also kind of ensures that, well, at least 50% of the staked ETH is safe if this is set correctly, because a slashed validator gets exited. So withdrawals would go to this address. And similar to like if they would go offline, eventually they would hit the 16 ETH threshold and also automatically get ejected. All right, and Lido, they implemented bunker mode as well. This is like kind of like an emergency mode that gets activated if too many validators get slashed or might get slashed in the future as well. And it slows down withdrawals, makes sure that penalties are correctly divided among all of the affected stakers. Yeah, the third one was implementation bugs. Well, they're of course everywhere, and especially like before it was just staking. You could only stake, you couldn't unstake. Now there are withdrawals, and that increases the complexity. And in my experience, complexity always brings bugs. So here's just an example from the audit. Basically, like I said, there's a withdrawal queue with requests. These have request IDs. And there are also checkpoints, which is like a batch of IDs, request IDs that might get slashed. So the checkpoint has a discount factor that's like, for example, 90% would result in like 10% of the ETH getting slashed for some batch. And to finalize the withdrawal request on the user side, you could give a hint, which would, so no looping was required. You could just get the right checkpoint immediately. Of course, it does need to check it. So here it checks the left bound correctly, like the given request ID needs to be greater than or equal than the given checkpoint. But then in the next check, they incorrectly use this is a request ID and this is a checkpoint ID. So they compare the wrong values. And as a result, you could choose any checkpoint in the future. So if your checkpoint got slashed, then you can just wait for the next one and choose that one to not get slashed and bypass the slashing. So a second example was with the share rate calibration for withdrawals. Basically, when ETH comes in, they burn shares to keep the share rate the same. But the formula that they used was too conservative. So any ETH that comes in, the amount of shares that was burned was not correct. And as a result, the share rate would decrease. And the more, like the higher the withdrawal amounts, the more impact it had. So, and this would already show at like 1% of the total staked Ether. So big players would be able to manipulate the share rate at the cost of others. And yeah, for example, that's one of the bugs that has an impact as kind of like MEV. So like I said, strategies to manipulate the protocol and then extract value at the cost of others. Some more examples that you can see maybe in other staking protocols as well, for example, is where you stake right before rewards come in, and then you unstake right after. And especially with liquid staking protocols, since there are two chains and the data does not come immediately to the smart contracts, what someone could do is watch the consensus layer. They might notice that a protocol validator gets slashed, and then they see this. The data is not going to the oracle immediately, so they can already exit on the execution layer side. They can like exit their ETH. So this is also something to take into consideration. And Lido mitigates this by having a withdrawal queue. So even if you do exit, if someone gets slashed, you'll still get your withdrawal request will also get slashed. Like you will pay for this. So penalties are distributed among all of the affected stakers. And for the first one, like how rewards are also slowly divided among the stakers. So there's no way to like quickly stake, get the rewards, and then unstake. Finally, I just want to highlight the misunderstanding of like the specification. So the consensus layer has a certain ways it does this, and these assumptions need to be implemented correctly. So For example, withdrawal credentials can only be set once. There was a bug in Lido where you can front run, where a validator can front run the deposit. So they would create a validator by themselves with their own withdrawal credentials, and then the protocol would deposit 32 ETH into that validator, and the withdrawal credentials would be ignored. So then you're just depositing in the validator, and they can withdraw the funds. Another one, if, like, for example, the protocol has a register of validators, and you can prove withdrawals against this. You can prove withdrawals for some validator, but the proof is only done once, and then the validator would go into a state that they're exited. Well, what you can do is you can deposit into any validator, and even if the validator is already exited, a withdrawal is still triggered. So what you could do is prove a second withdrawal with a really small amount to the protocol, and then the protocol would think that the validator just got slashed with all of their balance. Right, that's pretty much what I wanted to say.